Ladies and gentlemen, we are more than pleased to be in front of you today and to officially launch this 11th edition of ICT Spring. The past year has been very challenging, and we all the knowledge that no challenge is insurmountable. What comes out is the people's capability to adapt and even more to thrive on change.
This edition is unique because it not only aims to reconnect professionals together, but also people. ICT Spring is a great opportunity to share views with high-end experts worldwide, explore the latest innovations and initiatives in many different sectors, and create synergies between companies. It is also a chance to connect with passionate, inspiring, and committed people, and the program that we are able to offer you for this two-day event is the result of a great solidarity movement.
It's true. We would like to address a huge thank you to all the people who made this new edition of ICT Spring possible. Thank you to our sponsors, who contributed to support us in our mission to be a business enabler and to offer you a privileged platform to share ideas, favor strategic partnerships, and present new projects and initiatives.
Thank you to the speakers who until the last minute made all they can do to be present with us and to contribute to this 2021 edition. There are more than 200 this year, which is exceptional. We would also like to thank the Luxembourg government and the Luxembourg Chamber of Commerce for their continuous support, as well as the representatives of the Luxembourg Trade and Investment Offices that allow us each year to introduce you to insightful and innovative entrepreneurs.
Charlotte and I would finally like to address a particular thank you to Farvest team because they really committed themselves to offer a qualitative event to you this year and took up all the challenges to find a way in these uncertain times.
So during these 2 days, do not hesitate to switch from one summit to another to deepen your digital knowledge, capture the value of the fast-growing fintech industry, drive innovation in the supply chain, pierce the secrets of the IT security, explore the impact of space technologies on terrestrial businesses, and connect with entrepreneurs worldwide in the frame of the inaugural Mastermind Summit and competition.
For those who are attending this event physically, you can explore the exhibition area, its startup village, and connect with the Sri Lankan delegation that has come specifically for this occasion. Also, whether you're here physically or remotely, you can connect to myictspring.com to access the matchmaking program in order to meet the participants and plan meetings with them, as well as follow the targeted webinars that are offered in parallel with the conference.
ICT Spring is officially part of the Digital ICT Week, powered by Farvest and the Luxembourg Chamber of Commerce, so feel free to follow up on the different happenings that will happen not only today and tomorrow, but during all the week on the related website by Googling Digital ICT Week.
You now have all the necessary information to fully enjoy ICT Spring and to connect to the other participants. So thank you very much for your attention. We left the stage to the different masters of ceremony.
Have a great conference. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Come on, guys. Have been quite a long time. We have not been in a room with real humans, probably months and months. Anyway, welcome to these first days on the Digital Summit. Today, the host will take you through the morning. And the main goal of this morning is to reconcile tech and education. We also welcome people remotely. Not only the people here in the room, but also people connecting remotely, so welcome. Reconciling tech and education is actually a key subject, a big subject, I want to say. And we see how technology is moving fast and really fast, and in cycles that is difficult to continue, to follow. I'm a tech person, I have to reinvent myself every 3 years by now. So the question is how we reconcile all this together. and there is no secret formula. Myself, I try to run kind of different lives. So I have one life derived in tech, another life learning tech, another life teaching tech. And in order to find balance, I also have a life with a family and a life with sports. So I think you need to find your balance. You need to find your curiosity, and you need to be creative in order to reconcile in today's world. Now, let's focus on the conference and not so much about myself. So today we're going to cover subjects about changing lives through tech, inclusive tech, and how leverage tech for education. To start the day, I'm pleased to introduce the first presentation about managed crowd, the future of business as we know it. The first speaker has 20 years of experience in large enterprise software architecture, design, development, and operation. He's a senior director on solutions architecture at AWS2. Please welcome Christopher Davey. Welcome.
Hello, and thank you for having me here today. I'm very pleased to be here. It's been a long time since I've been to a conference, and it's great to sort of get out of the house and see a few people face to face, and hope we sort of start to do more of this as we go forward. So one of the things I wanted to speak to you today about is how do we sort of leverage all of today's technologies. Okay, there we go. It's working. So one of the things that we've been trying to do for years is harness the power of the collective. And as you can see, I'm a little bit of a Star Trek geek, so a ball cube seemed to be the best representation for that. But we've got a lot of challenges in today's society, in business, education, health, government. And we've got a lot of very exciting technologies which can help us address those. Cloud-native computing, distributed architectures, artificial intelligence, machine learning. You've got new approaches, agile delivery, advanced security, and it's all very, very exciting. And as my previous colleague said, it's very difficult to keep up with all of that as the years go by. But tech is great, but it only achieves, one aspect of the problem. And great tech needs people. And one of the things that we need to do is sort of engage that wider audience, build better sort of business and solutions to the problems we've got, and improve those services and education and government that we're trying to solve. There we go. Yes. So one of the things, and it's not a new idea, but utilizing the crowd to do that. You can collaborate to generate sort of ideas and interests. It's not, it's not new. It's been around for a long time. There were records of King Louis back in the 1700s. Giving prizes to people who could come up with a better solution for making alkalis in a more economic and efficient manner. There were prizes for people to generate more data for the shipping industry in the time around navigational challenges and longitudinal positioning of the ships. So the idea of trying to incentivize people to help solve problems is not new. But also other ways and innovations of utilizing the crowd have come about. We've got things like Patreon and Kickstarter. Patreon's there to help generate more creativity and a way of giving people to give back to content creators. And I watch a huge amount of sort of YouTube videos and stuff to help keep up with the tech these days. And there's lots of people generating that content for free, but platforms like Patreon have come along to help give them something back and enable them to do more and more on those platforms. You know, Kickstarter is another famous example. You know, if you look at some of the stats there, around $6 billion and 208,000 projects, you know, and that's across gaming, film and TV production, hardware development, software development, and many, many more. Here we go. That's it. So just one example of that. Here's a board game. Again, slightly geeky side. I'm waiting for the delivery of mine. You know, there was a project here, and it's the second round that this particular company did. 500,000 goal, almost $13 million generated, over 83,000 backers for the project. Now, these sort of figures are quite staggering, and they also show the market interest and commitment to these sort of projects. And so there's many, many more aspects of those. So if we talk about how to generate ideas and how to leverage people, you've got one example, again, dear to my heart, is Lego ideas where anyone can become a content creator. Anyone can come and up with an idea for a new Lego set, and they can then get royalties and get involved in the production of that if it goes to market. You know, there's been sets of the Beatles' Yellow Submarine that was very successful. So this is a way of leveraging the crowd not only for ideas, but also to do the market research on which ones will be successful and how they will play out in the market and on what to invest in. And this is all utilising the power of people, but with a platform to help them. Wikipedia's an old one that's been going for a long time. Again, collecting people's ideas, collecting people's knowledge, and pushing it into an easily consumable format. Now, there's many other solutions that have been used over the years for utilising sort of crowdsourcing, crowd resourcing. You know, you've got the projects like SETI at Home and Genome at Home, which were utilising untapped computing power of people's desktops when they were sitting idle on a screensaver to analyse radio telescope data or analyse protein crystallography data. You've got lots of marketing campaigns where you're getting the consumers' feedback on, you know, what they like or what new flavors and things. So they do us a flavor campaign from Pepsi on their Lay potato chips or Walkers. You know, in the example with the Lay chips, that was 14 million submissions and 8% growth just from reaching out to the customer base and asking what they want to see. And so there's lots and lots of ideas and lots of examples of where this goes. But you can see there's lots of data there, and it's all relatively available. And sort of this leads me to one of the next things I've been looking into a lot recently, which is sort of open and smart data. Now, we've got lots of opportunities, and there's lots of data available. And open data is one way that you can enhance your systems and services by pulling in already collated and easily accessible data into your platforms to be able to utilize that to drive forward new solutions or help your crowd innovate. So open data is all about, you know, making sure that it's there, it's not commercially restricted, it doesn't have limited use. It may or may not be free, depends on who's producing the data. But it's there to be utilised in whatever manner you need. And there's many examples of that. You've got government websites, you've got Google information, you've got World Health Organization, which has been a big one recently. And all of that data is available for people to use, look at, study, and hopefully generate some insights on. Because that's what you need, because data on its own isn't particularly intelligent. It's just a big pile of ones and zeros taking up space on some sort of hard disk somewhere. And without putting some analysis and context to it, without someone looking at it to try and get some insights and get some knowledge, it really doesn't achieve anything. And that's where data becomes smart. And if you look at lots of the smart data initiatives that are predominantly driven at building additional services and driving competition in ecosystems, it's quite astounding what can be done. Oops. So an example of this is the fact that someone could get access to some data in the from the Canadian government about how charity submissions had been done, managed to uncover a fraud of about $3.2 billion. Just because they could get access to the data, they could analyze the data, someone could look at it and say, hang about, this doesn't match what we're seeing in the actual charity space. So it's it's very very good to get people together to analyze, look, get their ideas, because as the quote there says, give enough eyeballs, all bugs are quite shallow. And as I said, with the expansion and growth, open banking and the PSD2 initiative is a great example where it's driving a massive growth in building up a fintech market, building up new business models, new ways of working, better services for end customers. Various companies now using open banking, PSD2 APIs to deliver services in far shorter timescales. You can get loans in minutes instead of days or weeks, all through the fact that the data is open, available on a secure and robust platform. One example of using data to create a new business model is the sort of pay stats from BBVA. They have lots of points of sale terminals collating lots of data. That data is valuable to other industries. So although that's not their main business, it was another revenue stream they were able to optimize from utilizing the data they already had. And again, having a robust technical platform to host, share, and access that on was critical. So there are also lots of new ways and lots of innovation in how people can, make a living these days. And, I wish back in the day when I had my first computer and was playing computer games that I could make money from streaming online with Twitch or Facebook or any of those other platforms. But, it's these technical revolution and the digital revolution that's sort of enabling a lot more newer ways of making money, surviving, doing business that we need to really utilize. So we've got lots of data, we've got lots of new innovative digital services, and you really need a solid platform to bring these together and to allow people to innovate. So you've got to do this in a secure environment. You've got to have easy access for them to the tools and the information they need to do to solve the problems that you want them to solve. Because when you put people together, it's not if you've got 10 people separately, you get some good ideas. If you have 10 people working collaboratively, you're going to get them building on each other and getting better and better ideas. So having a platform that allows them to do that is absolutely key. And innovation can have many wide-reaching effects. And it's not just about where you can focus on, I want to improve my logistics supply chain using AI and ML and analyzing the data. And you may well do so, and that would be great for the business. But that will also have impacts on the environment as well, as you streamline your transport needs and your use of damaging transport. So to utilize all these technologies and build a new digital society can be quite difficult. And one of the tricky things with these innovation labs and approaches to collaboration can be, how do you get these things started within your own organization. You know, they can often be seen as shadow IT, not aligned to business goals, but they need to have the right level of autonomy with the right governance and target set, as well as, again, utilizing that digital platform to enable you to measure and deliver the benefits that you're looking to achieve. So the main point, and I'm slowly running out of time, is there's lots of exciting capabilities out there today. How do you pull those together, generating that core digital platform so that people can utilize these technologies to solve the problems, enhance your business, enhance the services we provide in government, in local government, and across the world is something that we need to all focus on. And events like this, I think, are great because they enable us to talk together and work together at how we can do this. So thank you very much.
So, big thank you to Christopher. I think the crowd is really part of the solution. We need to gain the brain power of the crowd together to find new innovative solutions. Now, let's move on to the next presentation. And this time, we have two speakers joined remotely. It's Beverly, Parenti, and Chris Redlitz. They're joining us, I believe, from California. So it's kind of late in the night, or maybe early, depends how we see it. So it's our duty also to make sure they enjoy this session and probably continue during the night. They created The Last Mile, a nonprofit organization back in 2010 at San Quentin State Prison in California. The goal of The Last Mile is to provide education and training inside the prison, resulting in gainful employment for returning citizens graduate, thereby reducing reoffending, reconviction. The Last Mile has become one of the most requested prison education programs in the United States. It is the first program to offer computing programming curriculum that teach men and women to become software engineers. Beverly is a serial entrepreneur specialized in the advancement of innovative technologies. She was founding member of the first Virtual, the first offline payment platform with IPO in 1996. And Chris is the managing partner of Transmedia Capital, one of the best performing microfunds in the Silicon Valley, with investments in over 100 companies, including Wish, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Today, they will jointly present their initiative, The Last Mile, Changing Lives Through Tech. The program prepares incarcerated individuals to successfully re-entry through business and technology training. So, welcome, and the virtual floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. We're happy to be there this morning. We'd rather be with you in person. However, hopefully we can provide some insights for you this morning from afar. We're in Connecticut and the East Coast.
The past 10 years have led us down an unexpected path. Today we'll share our journey and what we learned along the way. So good morning, everyone, once again. We're here from actually the East Coast, and it is 3:30 a.m. and we are ready to tell you our story. In the 21st century, we depend upon technology for nearly every facet of life. There's a dramatic digital divide for those who are deprived of access to technology that continues to deepen as innovation evolves. We created a nonprofit technology startup for good, inside prison, the most digitally desolate environment in the world, and this is our story.
In 2010, I was escorted into San Quentin State Prison, one of the most infamous prisons in the world, to speak to a group of men about business and entrepreneurship. I was led through a series of gates, down a windy path, and through the prison yard into a small classroom where about 50 men were awaiting my arrival. It was my first time inside a prison. Truth be told, I was a bit nervous. However, after I began speaking, I noticed that many of the men had that look that we see in the eyes of founders and entrepreneurs that we invest in. But it was at a deeper level. They had the look that reflected their hunger to learn and desire to build a better life after they served their time. My 30-minute talk turned into a 3-hour discussion. When I left San Quentin that evening, I was thinking how Beverly and I could evolve that look into something actionable that would transform these men into successful contributors to the business community when they were released from prison. We didn't realize at the time how much this journey would change our lives, make us better investors and more compassionate people. There's a vast community of men and women behind bars with hopes and dreams who represent an untapped resource of talent for the business community.
Today, approximately 1.8 million people are incarcerated in the United States. 600,000 return home each year. The unemployment rate for these returning citizens is about 5 times higher than that of the general population. The lack of meaningful employment opportunities for returned citizens is a primary factor driving America's 50% recidivism rate, meaning they will return to prison within 3 years. In addition, the cost of incarceration is astronomical in the US and across the world. In California, for example, it costs $72,000 a year just to house someone in prison. You can go to Stanford University for $72,000 a year. We're often asked, why do people inside prison deserve an opportunity? Well, there's really 2 answers aside from the obvious fiscal and societal impact. First, many people in prison had such a disruptive childhood and upbringing, they never really got a first chance. Second, of the 95% of the incarcerated people will be back in society. They could be someone you see walking down the street, or they could be your neighbor. So the question is, who do you want them to be? Currently, there are more than 1 million software engineering jobs available, with new opportunities that remain unfilled due to a deficit of trained applicants. The last mile will help fill these jobs by enabling formerly incarcerated people to join the workforce with 21st century job skills. We believe that having a job is the key to successful reentry and breaking the cycle of incarceration. We're not only preparing incarcerated men and women for future employment, we're bridging the ethnic divide and creating a behavioral shift within the prison culture.
It was feasible for us to create the last mile because Beverly and I are serial entrepreneurs. We've started and run tech companies. We're investors, advisors, and mentors, and we have the resources and the network to make it happen. Although we didn't have previous experience in prison, we have deep expertise building organizations from startup to scale. We basically took a flyer on the fact that we could use our skills to become change makers and disrupt the cycle of incarceration. One of the biggest challenges was educating the prison administrators to understand the significant benefit of our program and affirm that technology in the prison environment should not be considered a security threat if it's managed under proper supervision and protocols. Creating a prison education program that teaches and utilizes sophisticated state-of-the-art technology is a daunting challenge. Prisons are fundamentally analog, and correction officials are hesitant in their approach to accept and endorse new systems and strategies. After all, many states have powerful lobby groups and unions that thrive on this status quo. But over the last 10 years, TLM has built a rapport with incarcerated populations, government agencies, correctional facility administrators across the United States. And today it's become the most requested prison education program. The success of TLM is creating a mind shift and changing the narrative in the business community, demonstrating that justice impacted men and women can become productive members of society and great employees.
So what is the last mile? We teach technical and soft skills. Our goal is to simulate a real workplace environment. We conduct mock interviews and technical assessments. Students work on group projects, collaborate on code, and prepare presentations. But something they learn that isn't taught is inherent in who they are: resilience, determination, and appreciation. When we started the program in San Quentin, we had 3 key performance indicators. Will the incarcerated population actively participate? Will they trust us and even want to learn technology skills? Will the business community support us by helping to teach the program and help us build out a robust curriculum that will lead to jobs? And finally, will companies hire our graduates? We are thrilled to say that even in our earliest years, there was a resounding yes to all KPIs. Participants in the coding program must complete 2 6-month cohorts and pass a technical assessment to receive a certificate of completion. Instruction focuses on HTML, CSS, JavaScript design, and data visualization. Students are required to participate in a minimum of 30 hours of computer lab time per week. The curriculum is presented by an on-site facilitator and virtually by a remote instructor using a dedicated internet connection on Google Hangouts. All virtual instruction sessions are recorded and archived for future use. We built a proprietary learning management platform inside a secure cloud infrastructure that allows our students to learn to code without internet access. This also enables them to become avid problem solvers and have a genuine appreciation for Google post-release. We're often asked how students are selected. It's an intense process, yet the acceptance rate is about 20%. Candidates must complete a written application, take a logic test, participate in face-to-face interviews, receive prison administration approval, and one of the most critical components is they are incident-free, meaning no bad behavior for 18 months prior to applying. And once accepted, they must maintain good behavior under our zero tolerance mandate.
There's a perception that a prospective employer is taking a risk hiring someone who's formerly incarcerated. In reality, today, employers are emphatic about how great, dedicated, loyal, and responsible TLM graduates are as employees. To our graduates, this is more than a job and a career. This is a chance to restart their lives, and they're grateful for the opportunity. And there are 2 important things that our students learn that are not in the curriculum. First, they learn to have confidence in themselves and know that when they walk out the gate, they will be relevant and understand how to use tools and devices that are part of everyday life. The other is hope for the future, because they know that the last mile and the business network will have a place for them to connect and prosper in their new life. They will no longer be judged by their worst mistake. The TLM returned citizen graduates are really setting a new standard for what is possible with companies who have hired our graduates, including companies like Slack and Zoom, Square, Checker, Plaid, Dropbox, and more. They're paving the way for other justice-impacted men and women to be welcomed into the tech business community. The fact that someone coming out of prison can be hired by one of these brands, for many of these people, it's their first job, is a credit to the commitment these companies have devoted to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
As we mentioned, TLM participants embody common characteristic traits: resilience, determination, and appreciation. You're about to visit one of our classrooms at Rockville Women's Prison in Indiana to hear from them firsthand.
Now I have a chance to do something that I love, which is designing web pages for people. And I can do that even in the comfort of my own home with my children there. And I don't have to be another statistic. I can make it. Thank you.
How has the last mile impacted your family and friends' perception of you?
Hi, my name is Cavett. I would like to start with a little bit of background information. So my family's always lived on the wrong side of the law, just generation after generation incarcerated. I had this moment with my son when he was a teenager, and I was apologizing to him and asking his forgiveness for failing him as a mother. And he just simply said, "Mom, you couldn't teach me what you didn't know." And so that's really had a profound effect on me. Some of my main goals in here are to just change my children's perception of me and to be a positive role model to them. So with the last mile, it's a great opportunity. I'm going to get a great job when I get out of here, no doubt. But it's so much bigger than that, because I'm going to be able to teach my children, my family, my friends, my community, that there's an alternative to that criminal lifestyle. And so, God willing, this is going to make it possible to just be able to break that generational cycle of incarceration. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ashley Gander, and when I first came to prison, my future felt really bleak. I felt like I'd lived forever in the shadow of my convictions and always be defined by my crimes. So to say the least, my self-esteem was very, very low. The conversations that I would have when I would call home would all just revolve around how to get home the quickest and just focused on nothing but getting home, and also worried about my future. Then the last mile came along and it completely made my thinking evolve. Now the conversations that I have when I call home consist of this new skill set that I've learned through the last mile, and what a great and prosperous future I'm going to have. My son and my family are extremely proud of me because they know that with this program, I never have to go back to my old ways. Thank you. I mean, the last mile is one of the best things I've ever done for myself and for my son as well. And it just, no words can describe how great this opportunity was and how much it's appreciated and how much it gave me that new lease on life that I didn't think I'd ever have, really. Honestly, being part of the TLM team, there's also a great sense of family. Like I said, my son is extreme. He is so proud having a mom that knows a lot about technology, really. Like, he thought he could show me up when I got out, and I showed him some of the things that I could do, and he's like, whoa, that's really, really cool. When I was inside, I at first was looking for every way I could to try and cut out, because I have a son and he's a teenager now. And I just really didn't want to miss out on those years. But when I got this opportunity and got told about it and saw what a wonderful chance it could give me, I slept on it for probably 2 or 3 days, just thinking about it, because I knew it was going to be difficult. It's not to be taken lightly. I mean, it's like I'm 36, joining beyond college level classes and learning a brand new trade that I never dreamed that I would be able to do. So once I finally made that decision, I called my mom and I talked to my son, and I let them know that I wasn't going to be out in 9 months anymore. I was going to do that full 24 months. And they fully supported me all the way. And it is the best thing that I ever made the decision to do.
So did you stayed in longer to finish the program?
Yes. Gave up time cuts to finish.
That's pretty incredible that you would stay in an incarcerated environment to finish a program because you realized the benefit. That's kind of an amazing thing in itself. And kudos to you for doing that. That's really incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity more than you know.
Oh, great. I wanted to share some other success stories of the over 1,000 participants that we've had. And here are a few highlights. Darnell Hill is a remarkable example of resilience. He spent 24 years in prison. In 1994, he was incarcerated in cellmates with his dad. Darnell maintained his focus and hope and was finally released from prison in 2016. It was the presentation of the business plan he wrote for his capstone project that helped him gain his freedom. Today, Darnell works as a TLM, returned citizen advocate, paving the road to success for others.
Charles Anderson lived the gang life as a young man growing up in East Los Angeles. During his time in prison, he earned a GED and became an exceptional student in the Last Mile Coding program. After his release, he was hired by Slack. After several promotions, he is a senior software engineer. Charles is determined to provide a positive example for his son and for his community.
Talisa Hal was in our first graduating class in the Indiana women's prison. She'd never touched a computer before her incarceration, yet she pursued her dream, and she is the lead web designer for the Indiana Department of Corrections. Her appreciation runs deep, and she says, within the classroom, each time I received a new challenge, I faced and conquered, it manifested my ability to believe in myself once again.
After completing a successful proof of concept and building a robust infrastructure, we are ready to scale. Today, we have 22 classrooms across 7 states, with many more in the queue. We also have the opportunity to disrupt the prison pipeline. TLM graduates volunteer and work within communities as role models for those that may have never thought of technology as a viable option for their future. When our graduates go back to the communities, they're providing hope and a path to breaking the generational cycle of incarceration. In addition to coding, TLM is developing new curricula to teach learners to become IT network engineers, certified audio technicians, and video editors. TLM's new music and video production program will launch a discovery tour across US prisons to find musical and spoken word artists that are hidden behind bars.
TLM is in a unique position to create significant change. Our goal is to be in 50 classrooms by 2025. And we really want to help balance the diversity gap in America and around the world. Our mission remains constant: to provide marketable skills that result in gainful employment, because we believe that having a job is the key to successful reentry and breaking the cycle of incarceration.
In closing, we'd like to share one more story, the story of James Cavett, a founding member of TLM who helped establish the first cohort in San Quentin. James entered prison as a 17-year-old child and served 22 years. He has endured what most would consider insurmountable challenges and is an amazing example of believing in the process.
James returned to society 3 years ago. Today he's married, a father, and he's earned his bachelor's and master's degree, and he's working on his PhD. He's an accomplished spoken word poet, and even virtually performing on the TED stage while incarcerated with John Legend. We hope you enjoy words from James Cavett.
Have you ever wanted something so bad that you were willing to risk everything that you had in order to make room for the thing that you wanted the most? Have you ever wanted something so bad that you were willing to look past the naysayers and hold on to the thing that you wanted without never doubting that sooner or later it would come?
My name is James Cavett. I was incarcerated for 22 years for a first-degree murder that I committed when I was 17 years old. My mother's her strategy was to give us away. And so she handed us over to CPS. And the day that she did that, I can remember holding on to my mother and saying, please, whatever I did, just don't give us away. Don't give us away. I think for me, always refer to it as the moment that I detached from my authentic self of who I feel like I was always meant to be. And after that incident, everything in my life changed. This anger that I had bottled up in me, I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know what to do with that. And so that hurt, I started to take it out on other people. I started to take it out on my environment. A lot of my unprocessed trauma showed up the night that I committed my crime. Every time that I stepped a little bit more of myself or shared a little bit more of my story, and people held it and they held me, and it gave me permission to start going a little deeper. And so I feel, me personally, that I have an obligation to stay connected to this work, to represent myself and others like me, to show the world what's possible. And I would love for when these men and women come home, for them to be able to come home to a space, to a neighborhood, to a community that's accepting and embracing and is willing to give a first chance, not the second, because many of us didn't have the first chance. One of the things that I've learned in this journey of growth and transformation, the more you help others, the more you can hold on to your own truth. You know, and I firmly believe that when I help somebody get closer to the top of the mountain, I don't help them without me not getting closer to the top of that mountain too.
Thank you again for participating in this, and we really appreciate the opportunity from ICT. Thanks for bearing with us on this, from doing it from thousands of miles away, but we really appreciate it very much. And if you have interest in The Last Mile, we're at thelastmile.org, info at The Last Mile, and on Twitter at The Last Mile, at TLM.
Thank you so much to ICT for bringing us together today, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you to Beverly and Chris. I think we are all a little bit shocked about how people can make so big and impressive and impactful contribution to society. So I myself have that experience. I run something called the Luxembourg Tech School, when we try to teach teenagers technology. And we call it today Creative Coding for All, when we try to reach all kids, including refugee kids and kids for whatever reason they cannot access technology. So this is completely inspiring, and it's showing also how we reconcile tech with education. So I hope you get motivated and try to replicate some of this very inspiring initiative. Now let's move on and welcome our next speaker, which is Shirley Miller. She's the founding director of the Digital Leadership Institute, which is a Brussels-based international NGO promoting inclusive digital transformation, and one of Europe's 100 digital champions. And in 2018, Google and the Financial Times placed her amongst the 100 digital pioneers of Europe. Today, she will discuss exploring inclusive digital transformation. So she's also connecting remotely. So welcome.
Thank you so much. And as always, I'm very sad to not be with you in person, but so glad to have the opportunity to connect with you today and to share a little bit about what I'm calling a digital spring for women entrepreneurs. So as our illustrious MC said, my name is Shirley Miller. I'm the founder of the Digital Leadership Institute in Brussels. And for about 7 years now, we have been promoting inclusive digital transformation through a series of different kinds of undertakings that are mainly aiming to increase the participation of girls and women in the digital transformation. And today I just wanted to first check in with all of us to ask whether, what this digital transformation is about, of course, and whether technology is living up to its expectation of being the, quote, great equalizer These are statistics already from 10 years ago, which is interesting because nothing has changed. In fact, everything has moved a little more exponentially. This is what the digital transformation is. The growth of the consumer cloud, that's everything that we use today from Airbnb to Uber, but also Industry 4.0, which is the cloud for running everything that our planet, our species uses to support our existence, basically. And where Europe actually leads the world with some, some questions about where that's heading in the future. The cloud also represents, or the disruption is also represented by the growth of mobile technology and the Internet of Things. But I'm not going to tell you any more about this because you all know, being at this event today, you know what the digital transformation is about. What I am going to ask is, in a world of 7.8 billion people and also growing, what's happening with the uptake of technology? This is a graphic from 2013 showing who is offline, who is online, and how many men and women have access to mainly the internet. And I'm going to show you that in the intervening 6 years, the growth in the number of people being online has exploded. But if you look carefully, the number of women having access to the internet is actually growing at a slower rate than the number of men. And this is what we call the gendered digital gap, or the gendered digital divide. Looking more broadly, or looking specifically at Europe, when we talk about Europe's internet gender parity, so this is also about access to the internet. I note that our participation rate is 0.94, meaning that there are 0.94 number of women per 1 man who have access to the internet. So when you think that it's perfect in Europe, in fact, it's not. And there are countries in the world, regions in the world that are ahead of Europe, even though, as you all know, Europe is actually the most digitalized region in the world, maybe just following South Korea as a country. So even in Europe today, a woman has less access to the internet, more likely to have no or low digital skills, far less likely by a factor of at least 5 to be an IT specialist, to found an IT startup, and to get funding for an IT startup or any startup. And you'll ask whether or not that's coming from the women themselves, and I'm going to show you that it's actually because of sexism, which is, the elephant in the room. Let's first look at digital skills. So for the number, so a little less than half of all Europeans have digital skills, and this is a representation for the half that do not, and you can see that that's 27% of all women and 24% of all men. These are adults. Looking another level of granularity at no and low digital skills, there's kind of a persistent trend, regardless of how more digitally skilled we become in Europe, of about 12 million fewer women disproportionately who are no or low digital skilled, which is a total of 2% of the adult EU population, if you're talking in terms of missed opportunities. Specifically, in terms of the number of IT professionals, and this is the most kind of shocking graphic to me, is even with the exploding demand for use of technology, the exploding demand for IT skills, the number of women who are participating as IT specialists has flatlined in Europe for the last 12 years, and actually represents a relative decrease in the percentage of women IT specialists in the workforce. And if you want to know what that means, IT specialists, these are statistics compiled by Eurostat. So whatever they define as an IT specialist, generally with a computer science education and working in the sector declared as an IT professional. That participation, why it's kind of shocking to me is because, as you may know, and even during COVID, so undisrupted by COVID, the number of tech jobs in Europe that are going unfilled because we don't have enough people with those skill sets is pushing the 1 million number in 2021. So 1 million jobs unfilled in Europe because we don't have the IT skills, we don't have the IT specialists. Also massive youth employment, especially in urban areas across Europe. And based on a study commissioned by the European Commission about 5 years ago, if we just had the same number of women participating in the IT workforce as we do men, we'd have the potential of another 9 billion euros being contributed to the EU economy every year, which is about the GDP of Denmark. Let's look specifically at entrepreneurship. These are the statistics on how many women starters we have in Europe. It took until about 3 years ago for us to even get a number of, that is approaching how many tech founders are female. And that might speak more closely to the people in this audience today. The numbers that I've heard range from 5% to 15%. What I know, for example, in Belgium in the tech sector, and this is only what we call rumeur corridor because we don't know for sure. So I just use the benchmark number of 10%, but I believe it's even less than 10% of all tech founders in Europe who are women. Those women entering entrepreneurship, it's also really important to think about who they are. Because of course, when we think of startup, we think of tech startup in particular. The trend is that these are, for the most part, highly educated white males. But a woman entrepreneur is usually forced into startup for economic reasons. So marginalized by traditional career paths. This is the infamous glass ceiling. And they start out on their own and because they have to for economic reasons. So this is especially the case right now coming out of COVID. As you all know, women have disproportionately been impacted by this recession caused by the pandemic and are being forced into entrepreneurship. So remember that they are what I call the FFF. They're fleeing, sometimes fed up 40-somethings, so an older age category. They tend to be what we call solopreneurs. So they're working as a sole proprietorship by as large a number as 85% of those people. And also, for example, in the UK, 80% of solopreneurship's are women-led. I was saying women enter startup because of being marginalized by by traditional career paths and this infamous glass ceiling phenomenon. Despite that we've had statistics from McKinsey about this for the last 10 years, unfortunately, it has not changed. But fully 80% of women are marginalized by traditional career paths. So we are talking about millions and millions of women, but who they are, what they're doing, how many people they could be employing, we don't actually know. Now let's look another level deeper. What does this represent in terms of where they are and what they're doing and how much funding they could be getting or could not be getting, as the case may be, in the current environment? So I'm often told, well, women don't do startup because maybe they don't want to. But you'll see from this graphic below via NGP Capital that Tech EU published last year sometime, that teams of starters who are mixed still get a lion's share of the funding that is available. Women who do enter startup still only get funded at a rate of 30% and Series A funding of 11%. And if we look specifically at a heat map, entering these most disruptive tech-driven sectors, but that's kind of hard to capture. But if you're looking at the green digital transformation, right, that's upon us, these sectors like energy, fintech, food tech, health tech, for the same number of people entering the area, this is about how many get funded. And you can see that the areas with the least funding are those that are represented by only women teams. So who are they? What are they doing? What could they be contributing to the European economy in terms of GDP and unemployment? As I said, we don't know. You measure what you treasure. And I'm asking now for the Commission to commission another study. How much are we missing from the European economy because women actually entering tech startup, actually entering entrepreneurship more broadly, if they were to get the funding to do what they would like to be doing, what would the impact of that be on our economy? Until we have those numbers, we're just working in the dark here. And we're not going to talk about why the situation is like that, at least not here, and discuss more about what it is that we can do to try to fix stuff. I'm going to just blow through this really quickly, but as the Digital Leadership Institute in particular, we are organizing several events that are targeting teen and adult women, also young girls, but the ones that are most important are like Move It Forward, which is a startup / hackathon weekend that's specifically reaching teen and adult women. We ran the only global Women versus COVID event in April of 2020, but we also do things that are impacting women disproportionately and asking them to tackle those challenges with digital skills that we deliver for them. And I can tell you that the outcomes are always mind-blowing, but we have issues getting funding to keep those startups moving. We run something called the Girl Tech Fest for young girls, and Cypro and Cloud Angels, which is more interesting, is actually about high tech or deep tech skills for women who are especially trying to enter into the startup ecosystem so that they can become data scientists or solutions architects and machine learning experts from scratch using Cisco and other Amazon Web Services and other tools and skills that are already present, but that are just not being delivered to women and teenage girls in particular. So that's it for me for today. I would love to connect with you virtually and in person someday. And thank you so much for having me here today.
So thank you, Shirley, for this inspiring effort in promoting digital inclusion and transformation, especially for women. Now let's move on to the next speaker. I would like to welcome Priscilla Chavez-Martinez. She's an expert on tech ethics and impact entrepreneurship. She has worked at the intersection of technology, entrepreneurship, and impact for over 15 years, collaborating with multinationals and startups all around the world. Priscilla is recognized as one of the 2020's Boldest Women in Central America by Business Magazine's ENN. Today, she will discuss and present us ethical intelligence from the learners of the future. So Priscilla, welcome.
So what is ethical intelligence? I guess the real question is, who are the learners of the future? Let's think 10 years from now. Let's say 2030. How do you picture the learners of the future? Are they young? Are they older? Are they men, women, non-binary? How do they learn? Do they go to a facility? Do they connect online? Do they have a microchip inserted in their brains? The reality is that when we think of the learners of the future, they are not who we think they are. The learners of the future, it's us. We are the ones that are in jeopardy, at risk of learning in the near future. How many people here have TikTok downloaded on their mobiles? Raise your hands. Okay, I see roughly 7 people, 8 people. So you're in for a treat now. TikTok is an online platform. It has over 2.6 billion downloads. 150 countries are using TikTok right now. They have 1 billion monthly active users. That's roughly 35% of the world's population. 60% of TikTok users are Gen Zers. That means they were born after 1995. So on TikTok, you could actually learn. There's a hashtag called Learn on TikTok that has 161 billion views. That's the equivalent of 21 views per person in the planet, as if every single person on the planet had seen 21 videos on TikTok. You can learn how to cut an onion like a chef. It has over 4 million views. And you can also learn math by following influencers that are on their senior year in college. You can also learn from Bill Nye, from Neil deGrasse, or you can learn from Charli D'Amelio. She's the most successful influencer on TikTok. She has 124 million followers. She started her career back in 2019 when she was 17 years old. She's a dancer, and right now, an influencer and mogul. So what is it on TikTok that is so fascinating? TikTok holds the future of learning. When we think about learning in the future, do not think about learning at a school, at a university, not even following a MOOC online. The future of learning will look dramatically different, a lot like TikTok. So how is it that young people are learning so fast and so collaboratively on a social platform, and we, the ones that are no longer young people, or not so young, that are definitely not Gen Zers, learning right now? So we're trying to catch up, basically. We are watching YouTube videos of how grown-ups are using TikTok. 108,000 views of a lady trying to explain to us how is it that we can cut, edit, and paste on TikTok. This is quite funny. It's hilarious, actually. If you look at these videos, you will feel so old. So what does the future of learning actually look like? Learning will be democratized. You can learn anything from any single expert in any field. Influence is the new accreditation. You don't need someone to come showing their flashy new university degree, telling you that they know how to run X or Y problem. You go on TikTok, you go on a social platform, you learn from them directly. So let's think of a revolutionized masterclass online. Co-learning is the future of learning because it will be social. We don't want to learn, we want to teach as well. Someone earlier today said, I don't use TikTok because I don't know what to post. Like, my life is not so interesting. I'm sure every single one of us think that way. We don't have to create content to be on TikTok. We can just learn from it. Traditional sit-down learning is out. Experimentation is in. I have never cut an onion like an expert, but I'll try it on TikTok. You can learn from dance moves to political education. Forget about classes. Forget about topics. You can learn everything in 60 seconds. How many videos can you really digest? Can your brain really digest in 15 minutes? And finally, micro-learning is supposed to be fun, high engaging, and short investment. So with that, how is it that the world will shift from this point forward? McKinsey did a report late last year on the future of work, and it basically gave us the keys to everything we already knew. We know about technological displacement. We know people will be out of jobs. We know for a fact that there are professions that will cease to exist. And we also know there are careers and new trades that are going to be created, invented within the next 10 years. So which are those occupations? Where are those displaced people? Certainly not the Gen Zers that are watching on TikTok. The displaced individuals are sitting in this hall room. The displaced individuals are right now out there in the world trusting that their jobs are not going to be displaced by a robot. They are getting university degrees. They are doing masters, PhDs, because they think a piece of paper will save them. So based on this report, and I highly recommend it, we know that before COVID, there were circumstances that were critical. We already knew technological displacement was happening. We knew automation and robotization were going to create and eliminate jobs. We knew that the population was getting older. We knew for a fact that climate change was changing the way that we were seeing the world. We also knew that education was becoming increasingly available for more people around the world, and that technology was basically being also democratized. But then COVID-19 happened, and we need to add additional layers to that equation. Those layers are the acceleration of automation. Within the first 6 months, and you've probably heard this as statistic already, within the first 6 months of the pandemic, we were able, as if it were our achievement, to accelerate technology and science at the same pace that had been anticipated for the next 5 years. So basically, in 6 months, we achieved what was planned to be achieved in 5 years. We also saw a rapid acceleration of e-commerce, and people basically just going online to live their lives. Increased remote work and reduced business travel. So how are these circumstances changing the way that displacement looks like? 100 million people around the world are going to switch occupations within the next 9 years. From here until 2030, we will see a shift, a dramatic shift, at least at the top economies. So where are these 100 million people coming from? Let's start closer to probably your lives and your work. In France alone, 6.4 million people are going to be displaced by automation by 2030. But only 3,000 new jobs will be created based on that. In Germany, 10.4 million people are going to be displaced by automation, with a 21% of occupation transition within the next 9 years. If we compare the two countries that are relatively close in distance, they couldn't be further away, further apart from an impact perspective. On your right side, you'll see Germany will have 1.3 million fewer jobs at a low wage range. When we think of the brackets of jobs, 1.3 million jobs less at the lower bracket. When you think of France, you'll have 850,000 more jobs at high wage jobs, with only a loss of 150,000 jobs at the lower bracket. So this speaks to the different decisions, the different political scenario, and the different circumstances that each of these two countries have been experiencing so far. If we go to the USA, 45 million workers are going to be displaced by automation within the next 9 years. 28% of occupation transition will occur. Is this the highest impacted country that will experience some sort of change within the next years? No. It's happening in China. 157 million workers will have to will be displaced by automation. But only 13% will be able to transition to a new occupation. Not particularly a fan of replicating or quoting tech entrepreneurs, but a lot of tech entrepreneurs, the ones that are famous, are really pushing towards an experimental decision towards universal basic income. What will happen when you have people that are healthier, older, because our lifespan will expand, we're out of jobs. Maybe we don't need jobs because UBI will cover for our most basic needs. Can you imagine such a world? Makes you wonder if you should download TikTok right now, right? So how's the shifting occupations by 2030? We clearly see in this very cluttered graphic that the top professions or occupational categories are going to be the ones increasing. People working in the health industry, STEM professionals, creatives, art management, transportation services. And we know, with no surprise, that the jobs or occupations that are at the lower range of this chart are the ones that will be impacted or decreased. So work around agriculture, office support, production, basically jobs that are at the lower wage bracket. So if this rapidly growing pace of occupations include jobs in new technology, in health, in the creative industries, and socio-emotional supporters, what should I do now? So there is an array of professions that some of them don't even exist right now. You can't find curricula for this at a college, at a university. You'll probably find something online. But for most of this, we need to invent them ourselves. And let's not forget about the intersectionality of disruption. I would consider that every single person sitting here, if not probably most of us, have been very privileged in our careers, in our lives. The fact is that technological displacement will most likely not happen here. It will happen on women, younger population that are not qualified, less educated workers, ethnic minorities, and immigrants. We know for a fact that although women make up for 39% of the world workforce, they suffered 54% of job loss during the pandemic. We also know that women and other minorities are the ones taking care of society. US women spend 10 to 15 hours per week on caring activities that are usually unpaid for, unrecognized, and completely transparent to the economy. So let's see an example of how a transition could look like. And even if we are not the ones that will be displayed, we certainly have the resources and the tools to make sure that a transition journey happens for every single person at our companies. So think of Cheryl, this young woman here. She's a cashier. She earns $21,000 per year, roughly. And she needs to look at different transition opportunities. She might go into transportation. She might go into retail. She might go into tech or healthcare. So her immediate next career move could be as a driver, as a promoter, as a call center CSR, or as an orderly working for healthcare. That might not represent a great transition from a salary perspective for Cheryl. But if she continues to learn in non-traditional ways, because obviously our traditional education system is not built or designed to support users like Cheryl, so she'll have to go non-traditional. She'll have to go rogue. She might be able to advance her career, to be a sales rep, or to become a nursing assistant, get a couple of certifications and be hired at a private clinic, to then be able to land a leadership position, a managerial role, and then dramatically increase and impact her well-being, her lifestyle, and her average yearly wage, all through non-traditional learning opportunities. So the real question that we need to ask ourselves is, or the main three questions, I would say, what are those new approaches to training that can support millions of people that will be out of jobs relatively soon? Second question, what type of benefits do these people need? Universal basic income, unemployment insurances? Can business and governments work together to build solutions not only to navigate the pandemic, the crisis that we're still at least in my country, we are still at a very vulnerable position, but also the world after the pandemic. Let's play this video. I'm not sure how many of you are gamers. I'm not, but I learned that November last year, Travis Scott, who is a very talented artist, decided to do a little concert together along with Fortnite, which is a very famous video game. And they were able to have 44 million people attending live their virtual concert. This wasn't a regular concert, no. This was one of the very first massive events in a metaverse. Are you familiar with the term metaverse? 2 people, okay. Think of the evolution of the internet. When we're all hooked up and super connected, virtually there, our brains are there, our bodies are in this physical realm, but we are living online, we're living on the web. VR, AR, everything combined. 44 million people attended this concert. How can we think of the metaverse as an alternative or as a new approach for learning? How can we incorporate our training objectives, our massive incentive to move 100 million people into new occupations using a technology that already exists? Don't get me wrong, I really love this. Like, for entertainment purposes, it works. There's no reason why it wouldn't work for training as well. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. Have you seen the Tesla bot? Yes? Okay. This is relatively new. Not new technology, but new announcement. So not only is Elon Musk now shooting rockets and doing nice cars, but he's now doing bots. What's the combination between artificial intelligence, robotics, into an ethical environment that can support learning for people that are out of learning opportunities because they cannot afford university degrees, because they need to work 16 hours a day? Can we think of a way of massively training people using bots? Elon Musk said that these guys and ladies and non-binary bots were supposed to take all the boring work that we do and do it themselves. I say training is not boring at all, but we can certainly use a bot or two as learning assistants. And finally, Mark Zuckerberg releasing, along with Ray-Ban, the new way of capturing your day-to-day activities, using your very cool, chic glasses that will take pictures and videos. Can this be also used as a new training approach for all the displaced people? So these are 3 examples of how tech that already exists, that is being used for entertainment purposes, could be transitioned into ethical intelligence. But the technology doesn't work by itself. Technology needs to be supported at a foundation of ethical decision-making. Are you being held accountable for the decisions that you're making within your organizations and communities? If you want a copy of this presentation, follow this QR code. If you want to carry on with the conversation as well, follow us at 10X Academy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Priscilla. Don't run away so fast. Now, raise the hands again. How many have downloaded TikTok by now? We got some impact? Yes. Yeah, great. Thank you. Our next presentation is entitled, How Hygiene Will Implement the UN Sustainable Development Goals, by Avanti Sharma. She is only 14 years old. She's a tech specialist at the Workshop for Me ASBL here in Luxembourg. She is passionate about bringing a new model of education based on coding and STEM, and addressing global issues differently by taking into account her generation's view. So, Avanti, welcome.
Hey everyone, I'm Avanti. The Sustainable Development Goals. The world is worried about them. We, iGens, are worried about them. Maybe even a little bit more worried. After all, we are the ones who are going to live through this. iGens, or better known as Generation Z, are branded by the adult world as self-obsessed, lonely, and an overall unreliable lot. However, there's more to us. The Sustainable Development Goals was introduced in September of 2015. It has been 6 years since then, and I've been watching with worry. Just a few weeks ago, I read a progress report by the UN, and after reading that, I realized that it's time that I get up and speak. So here I go. Hey everyone, I'm Avanti, I'm 14 years old, and I'm the preteen technology specialist at Workshop for Me. Workshop for Me is a non-profit organization through which we teach children aged 6 to 16 to become the problem solvers of the future through programming and other technological skills. The SDGs are organized into 17 goals, 169 targets, and 230 indicators. Having gone through them, what struck me was that there was only one set of targets for all 193 countries. Each are on different levels of economic growth, and so have different capabilities. To me, it's like giving the same classwork to 193 students with vastly different levels of talent, which means those who are already ahead need not work very hard. It is the weakest set of students that are made to work the hardest. In the real world, when our goal is to keep the world temperature from a 2 degrees Celsius increase, everyone needs to work hard. I'd like to postulate a theorem. To me, equal is not equal when it is made equal for all. All the SDGs have targets and indicators without a root cause analysis. It's like treating a symptom without identifying the inherent reason. This is a no-no to an iGen. So let's take a look at some sustainable development goals and see how an iGen would implement them. Goal number 1, no poverty. The UN has set the goal to end poverty completely by 2030. To achieve this, it has set targets to reduce the proportion of people earning less than $1.25 US per day. As an iGen, I see that the most violent regions of the world are also the poorest, so the targets should also be set in reducing violence in those regions to fight poverty. Goal number 2, zero hunger. Currently, the targets to eliminate hunger is producing more food. Now, this will work for a short time, but we all know that in the long run, producing more food means more stress on the earth, with the higher use of chemicals, higher water consumption, and loss of productive time of people. We have to save all of these. On average, 30% of food produced goes to waste. To fight hunger, saving food has to be the key. Restaurants, hotels, and bakeries are made to throw away perfectly good food by their closing hours. A target should be set so that this is discouraged, and no more than 2% of prepared food should go to waste. Goal number 3, good health and well-being. We iGens understand the value of good health and how to get to it the right way. While we know that running marathon is good for our health, we also know that it will not take away deposited chemicals in our body. The SDGs are missing the targets to reduce the use of chemicals in food to meet some security standards. Exercising, walking, running is not sufficient if chemicals are depositing in our bodies from the food we need. On the note of well-being, sports people like gymnasts, sprint runners, and swimmers are being pushed beyond human capabilities to beat world records. To me as an iGen, I feel sad for them, especially the way they miss winning a medal and the way they cry. It tells me a lot. It shows their thoughts that the painful, daily, 8-hour-long training routines of theirs has come to nothing. It shows the physical and mental trauma they've been going through, and with a failure to win a medal, how that pain has become even bigger for them. This is against the original idea of the Olympics or other global sporting competitions. This is causing younger generations to lose their interest in sports and making the move towards esports, where sports is not associated with pain or trauma. As iGens, we wish for the SDGs to humanize sports again so that there's larger participation globally. Goal number 4, quality education. Today, all over the world, we see so much violence, hatred, and distrust. Most of those involved have undergone a formal education. This means there's something fundamentally flawed with the system. Part of the root cause is the individual evaluation systems at schools. Individual evaluations encourages the idea of separation, where a student or colleague keeps knowledge to himself to outperform his peers. This, I believe, is the source of bigger problems in society which we must address. I was able to see the advantages of teamwork when I was 8 at a hackathon where a small group were tasked to develop something on the theme of 3 words in 24 hours. I got fascinated by the idea and thought, why don't we include group challenge-based learning exams in our schools? Why is it only based on how much the student knows or remembers on that day? Instead, it should also be based on their ability to solve a given problem. I request from this platform of the IT Spring Conference 2021 to all the educators of the world to include group, challenge-based learning exams in schools, similar to how hackathons work, where the team wins, not an individual. Goal number 5, gender equality. The SDG target to solve this is through laws, which means forcing offices to recruit women to senior positions. This imposition is causing integration and trust issues for women, and them not feeling respected enough. We need to look at this issue at its root cause. The origin of gender inequality lies in the way men and women have always been divided. Let's take global sporting competitions. The Olympics, or international sporting committees, have organized teams by gender. Over the years, gender inequality in sports has brought in public humiliation to great players. This is against the motto for which these organizations were set up. Today's iGens are getting more attracted to esports, which are fair because they organize their players by skill, ignoring the gender of the participant. Now, we all know that biologically, men and women have a different body structure. But if we organize contestants based on their skill level, it would be fair. Let's take the example of my dad. Hi, Dad. He's watching online virtually. If my dad played against Serena Williams, the world would call it unfair. But unfair against whom? I would say it's unfair against my dad. I'm glad to see that the Tokyo 2021 Olympics have brought in this discussion with mixed gender relays starting for the first time this year. Goal number 6, clean water and sanitation. In the SDGs, there are no targets set for hygiene under sanitation. Every few years, an epidemic breaks. What's surprising is how it's allowed to spread so quickly. Then, tough actions are taken to cordon off vast areas of land or even countries to stop contamination from growing. By this time, billions of dollars and hundreds of lives are already lost. We have to strengthen our preventive measures and shift from our current focus of correction. As an iGen, I'd recommended 2 preventive actions in February of 2020, before COVID-19 was officially declared a pandemic by the WHO. Firstly, to make greetings infection-free by adopting Namaste as the standard. It has been proven that handshakes are the primary source of spreading infections rapidly. Studies show that during a handshake, 124 million microbes are transferred from one hand to the other. With Namaste, it's 0. Secondly, airlines have yet to realize that scanning passengers for viruses are just as big of a priority as them carrying arms. Viruses have a huge reach in causing damage to humanity. Millions of passengers have flown across the world without even going through a simple check for tuberculosis or any other highly infectious diseases, which could make the entire aircraft, full of up to 200 passengers, infected by just a few cuffs and walking around the airport for a couple hours. I'm glad to see that both of these preventive actions have taken effect over this period. Goal number 7, affordable and clean energy. As iGens, we're most happy to see the progress being made in moving away from coal and oil. 2 big events have happened recently. Firstly, Europe has taken the global leadership to make and produce green and renewable hydrogen. Secondly, the Global International Solar Alliance, declared in 2015 under the Paris Declaration, is another great initiative for the promotion of solar energy. So, full marks here. Goal number 10, reduced inequalities. Knowledge to me is the greatest factor in reducing inequality. Not merely the distribution of wealth. Knowledge is the root and money is the symptom. Knowledge will automatically bring money. Distributing money is like treating the symptom. Addressing through knowledge is like looking at the root cause. Goal number 12, responsible consumption and production. As iGens, we dream to live in a world where when a bottle is empty, its label could be taken off or replaced so that it could be used for something else. Alternatively, having each shop have a deposit box for packing materials. Currently, instead of being rewarded for giving back our packing materials, we're severely discouraged too, as the threat of losing our warranty is at play. As iGens, we know that if we take small steps, things will just happen. Continuing with packaging, the packaging used by leading tech companies of today requires a lot of water per package. The unboxing user experience is short-lived, and the pristine packaging is thrown out as soon as the product is taken out. Reusing the packaging is nearly impossible, as the inner fittings of the blocks are glued in so tightly they could withstand a war zone. So I have to give the UN SDG campaign credit for this. They've recently started to promote the SDGs on public platforms and encourage the involvement of younger generations to participate in the Global Week of Act for SDGs. This is a great first step in getting more people involved. Goal number 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. Misinformation and half-truths are the primary source of distrust and hatred spreading across the world. Leading institutions and publications have been found, again and again, to be involved in spreading half-truths or fake news. I request that the SDGs should set up targets to quickly identify and correct half-truths or incomplete information on any matter of national or international importance. This particular goal needs priority attention to start healing the wounds of humanity and make the world a more enjoyable place to live for the next generations. And lastly, goal number 17, partnerships for the goals. For each of these goals, we need to find ways to collaborate. We have to remember that at the end of the day, we're all one, united by the world, and most importantly, each other. And when all this is done, we iGent will be free to sing. All I want to do is come running home to you, come running home to you. And that defines who we really are, because for us, Earth is home, and shall always stay that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Avanti, for opening our eyes and the need of all generations working together, and especially looking into our future and sustainability of our society and world. So now let's have a very short advertising break. It's only 5 minutes for this part.
To cope with crisis and difficulties, to be warned about threats and dangers, to evaluate and manage the risks each storm brings, to be expertly guided in an increasingly digital world. Nothing is more important than a solid and trustworthy partner. With EBRC, you can face uncertainty with complete peace of mind. EBRC, your trusted ICT partner.
So our next presentation is from the Luxembourg Chamber of Commerce and the Luxembourg government. Remember that these are important sponsors and supporters of this event, not only today, but in the past. And they have made the honor to record this presentation. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to ICT Spring 2021. I am delighted to see this edition organized as a hybrid event with a physical presence of exhibitors. More than a year ago, the situation was still a different one. I remember very well how we needed to enhance, nearly all of a sudden, our expertise in organizing virtual events. So I would like to express my respect and congratulations to the organizers of this event. The COVID-19 crisis has created an unprecedented period in the history of the economy. Although there might be some light at the end of the tunnel, its impact on countries, market sectors, and companies is not yet fully apparent. The pandemic has also reminded us about the vulnerability of our societies to severe, large-scale global shocks. Our challenges ahead go beyond economic recovery. The world is facing new megatrends involving complex environmental, social, and economic issues that require ambitious actions on several fronts. This compels us to readjust our economic business models. Cultivating an innovative approach and building a resilient business strategy are essential for our economy and for our companies. In June 2021, Luxembourg's Ministry of the Economy presented the Ons Wirtschaft für Morgen roadmap for post-COVID recovery. It is an ambition action plan aimed at making the national economy more resilient by 2025, while accelerating the green transition and digital transformation. As Luxembourg Chamber of Commerce, we welcome the analysis underlying the main priorities of this roadmap. I am pleased that the Ministry's strategy included some proposals from the Luxembourg Chamber of Commerce Economic Recovery Plan presented in July 2020. 5 main levers to create the conditions for sustainable recovery were identified, namely simplification of the structural framework, investment support, innovation, talent competitiveness, and last but not least, fiscal attractiveness. At the same time, it is important to transform this roadmap from a note of intent into a real business plan. It should involve all key economic stakeholders. We must ensure its seamless, concrete implementation in the coming months and years. In order to do so, this roadmap must include key performance indicators, a schedule to assess the timing and progress of projects, a precise multi-year financing plan to materialize the ambition. Today, as we are faced with the challenges of climate change and the health crisis, we must find solutions. Digital transformation is probably not a panacea to all ails that business might face in the current and future environment. However, regardless of how the crisis and aftermath unfold, we need to recognize that digitalization can provide solutions for many of our challenges. Regarding the climate, the World Economic Forum reports that digital technology can reduce global emissions by 15%. Moreover, we have all witnessed that digital transformation has increased the efficiency and performance of companies. But our digital strategy must be inclusive. Transformation and technology is driven by people. In Luxembourg, we understand the importance of investing in people and talent for this transformation. ICT specialists represent 5.6% of total employment in Luxembourg, compared to 3.9% in the EU. Yet, we still face several challenges. The use of digital technology in the public and private sectors must be improved, including digitalizing administrative procedures. We also need to reinforce our common vision on the open data strategy. We must enable the effective use of data in the health, industry, and finance sectors. Equally important, we need to establish the medium and long-term skills needs for digital professions. As a priority, more resources should be allocated by the state to the digitalization of the public sector. We should be deploying a modern digital strategy. We must facilitate data interoperability, drawing inspiration from the private sector's best practices. In short, we need to digitalize end-to-end administrative procedures for businesses. The Chamber of Commerce Group is actively contributing to the digitalization of Luxembourg. Our House of Entrepreneurship has developed the Go Digital initiative to help companies with the digital transition. We also collaborate with Luxembourg's innovation agency, Lux Innovation, on joint initiatives such as the Fit for Digital packages. Daily, we see the power of collaboration to foster innovation and resilience in Luxembourg. As Henry Ford once said, coming together is the beginning, staying together is the progress, and working together is a success. ICT Spring is in fact a culmination of our collaborative digitalization efforts here in Luxembourg. The interaction between companies as well as public-private collaboration is a tremendous source of value creation, knowledge sharing, and productivity growth. It gives us enough reasons of being optimistic about the challenges of the post-pandemic future. This being said, it is my honor to pass the floor to Prime Minister and Minister of Digitalization, Mr. Xavier Bettel, who will share his insights with us. Thank you very much, Mr. Bettel, for being with us, and I hope that next year we can meet again physically on the stage. Thank you very much for your attention.
Dear Excellencies, dear guests, dear friends, I welcome you to this year's ICT Spring Conference. Whether you found the way to Luxembourg or you're watching us over the net. Maybe you're watching us on your mobile phone. You might see me in a window inside your metaverse as a part of your virtual environment. Maybe you're watching us on an airplane traveling over the Atlantic, or you're sitting in a high-speed train to Berlin. Whichever way you participate, you bring to this event your human soul, your inventiveness and creativity. And you bring your friends and let them discover part of what makes Luxembourg's ecosystem so impressively vibrant. My main message today is about learning. Learning is about discovering new facts. It's an update to your world vision. My team and I have learned a lot about the possibilities of the 5G world. For me, it is a world with more opportunities, more safety, and more interaction. That is why we continue to support 5G-based use cases here in Luxembourg, for example, with the hospital group or with the world-leading communications research community. We have also learned what still needs to happen in Luxembourg if we want every citizen to have access to these new possibilities. We will not leave anyone behind, and we'll gradually close the digital divide. And we want to show you how we will do this at our Connecting Tomorrow conference at the beginning of October, where I will present the new national broadband strategy. My friends, we will have to learn about a few other, less convenient facts when it comes to the climate emergency. We will have to learn to adapt to a new reality. No, I'm not talking about adapting to climate change as such. I'm talking about the new global digital market, about you customers. I'm using this platform to ask each and every one of you, creators and entrepreneurs, to put your minds to solve the biggest problem we face. We need to think very concretely about how we can use the most powerful technology we have in our digital ecosystem to become climate neutral, to become as efficient as possible, to build the tools the world needs in order to master this climate emergency. I want Luxembourg's ICT community to focus on what lies ahead of us, on what this climate emergency means for our digital economy. The largest need for climate neutral software and IT tools there ever was on the global market. My friends, this is my digital agenda for the coming months. Those are two simple points. You will hear more about this agenda in the next months. At the end of October, Luxembourg will host the informal D9 Plus group of digital frontrunners. I will use this opportunity to concretely discuss those topics and search for solutions with my colleagues. Digital access for all and digital tools to combat our climate emergency. This is what I want to work on. I count on all of you to help us in this task. Enjoy this year's ICT Spring, Connect and Innovate together in Luxembourg.
Big thank you to Carlos Thelen, Director General from the Luxembourg Chamber of Commerce, and the Luxembourg Prime Minister, Xavier Bettel, for the contributions to the event. Now, our next session, I'm pleased to welcome on stage Nicolas Berriot. He's chairman of the board of the Eura Technologies. This way. He's the biggest European incubator. He's also president of the European Startup Network, the industry group representing in startups in Brussels. Nicolas sits also in the board of companies and foundations of Tinder and France Alzheimer, very interesting. From 2016 and 2021, he led the France Digital, Europe's largest startup organization with more than 2,000 startup members and 100 VCs. So, welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
So, Nicolas, you are the president of the European Startup Network, and now you recently joined as the chairman of the board of Eura Technologies. My question is, first, what is your mission?
Well, we all have a simple mission, is turning the big turmoil of COVID into something positive. And look at what has happened over the past months. We have seen probably the biggest digital leap forward ever. If I may, before COVID, we had this. Every second, you had 400 people connected to the internet for the very first time in their life. Now that COVID has came, you have this. You have 800 people connected to the internet every second across the globe. So that's pretty much what we do. We try to tap this fantastic digital transition, this fantastic digital transformation happening all across the globe into something positive.
So I think we have seen the transformation. We have people here in the room, people join us virtually, and this acceleration. Now, the challenge is how we can sustain it, because we're not going to have to 8,000 to, I don't know, 60,000, or, we cannot go faster with our fingers. So how we can sustain at least this growth or even accelerate it?
A few kilometers away, there are big events going on, German elections. And if you look at the platform for the German candidates, they are all aiming at minus 65% of carbon dioxide emissions. This is enormous. This is gigantic. I mean, the country in Europe that was made with steel and coal and CO2 everywhere, basically, they are turning to a green transition. And when they say, okay, we're going to do minus 65% in terms of CO2 and carbon dioxide emission, that means that we, the future generation, we young entrepreneurs, we have to do actually minus 90%, minus 100%. And that's pretty much the mission that we have set at Eura Technologies in France and at the European Startup Network at the pan-European level, is that we have to invent digital solutions that are zero carbon digital solutions. And that's a huge, huge, huge transformation that we have to do. Over the past 20 years, we've produced many, many good digital solutions, many fantastic products. You see the iPhone and so on and so forth. But this clearly wasn't articulating the digital transition and the green transition. Now, that's our mission.
Okay, now we see opportunities, you know, and all this transition and these goals, wherever we look from energy to digitalization and so on. So the next question is how we can create a tech champion. And my question is a more tricky one because I see a big challenge to compete with US and China, okay? I don't see myself many tech champions happen in Europe. Maybe I just don't know then. I see an incredible power of startup in the US and China around tech. So how are we doing in Europe? Do we see any light in the tunnel?
You're totally right to frame the question this way. I mean, most of the debate that we're having in these rooms is all about creating unicorns. Okay, so what? Creating tech champions is way harder because we are not talking about money valuation. We are talking about real values. Like, are you able to set global standards? When you are a tech champion like Microsoft, you set global tech standards. When you are a Huawei, you set global tech standards. So it's not a question of, I want to become a billionaire. It's a question of, do we want to have tech champions that are able to promote, to create global tech standards? Because global tech standards, they are not neutral. Let's forget about that. They are not neutral. Global tech standards, they are clearly promoting some values. So if we don't have tech champions to set global tech standards, we won't have anyone actually promoting our European values. And that's why it's so important to create a European tech champion. So how do we do that? Because that was your question, right?
What are the secrets?
I'm being very French, you know, trying to nudge the question. But yeah, it's a question basically of market size. And if I may, we just had the Olympics. Just imagine that startups are competing at the Olympic Games. You have the American teams, they are running 100 meters. And you have the European startups running 110 meters with 27 hurdles. So obviously, the American team is going to run way faster than the European team. And by the 27 hurdles, I mean all the 27 national regulations for everything, for data, for banking, we need to create this common framework. We need to create this digital market at European level. That's how we're going to get the European tech champions. Otherwise, we're going to spend ages discussing in very fascinating rooms like this one about capital, about talents, and so on and so forth. These are important topics, but clearly it's about the market size.
Okay, so it's clear that that the market size is a big factor. You know, we see also here in Luxembourg as a small country. But at the same time, we were able to be very successful in the financial sector, okay? So, you know, in some areas, yes, I fully agree that the market size is critical, but I think also we need to find our areas of expertise. You can call it niche, you know? So how you see that? You see already niche. I mean, we have people here that online or physical that might want to try, you know, and take some risk and try to do some innovation in order to try to become a tech champion. So which are the areas that you see that people should be thinking about investing or trying or to learn for the coming future?
I won't be looking at specific sectors. I will be looking at specific problems. There are questions, there are problems that we Europeans want to solve that Americans and Chinese, they just don't care about. Let's look at the environment. Let's look at social inequalities. Let's look at education. We've seen very interesting European unicorns, European tech champions in education, in digital transition, in environmental transition, so-called tech for good unicorns. This is a very European thing. The Americans, I do believe that we Europeans actually try to solve some problems that Americans won't never think of. I'm going to take a very specific example. You have a French unicorn called Back Market. Back Market, their motto is new is old. What they do is just take your broken iPhone and refurbish it, okay? That's clearly not something that an American citizen would do. He's not going to refurbish his iPhone. He's just going to order another one every year. So by asking ourselves the right questions, and I mean the right questions that are in line with our values, I do believe that we can actually create tech champions and unicorns that are totally unique in the world.
Okay, so I think this is a very good idea. I took note for myself. So how we get, not the younger generation, but every of us thinking on those problems, how we can target this mindset, because as you said, it's a different mindset looking into problems, you know. Look the problems around you that you can solve that for whatever reason are more intrinsic to Europe, or not necessarily to Europe, but intrinsic to the economy or the ecosystem you have around you. So how do you think we can incentivize, you know, or how you are doing that to incentivize that to happen? Because you need those companies or those brains actually to try that.
I'm going to confess something. I feel old at 32 years old. When I look at my little brother and he's just spending all time on his cell phone, I'm pretty sure you have the same at home. Yeah. It's fascinating because the young generations are spending a lot of time actually, you know, with these iPhones, these digital solutions, but they don't have a clue about how it is made, how it works. And I think it's a big issue that we have. We consume tech, but we do not actually think about tech. And clearly the key will be education. If we are not able to raise dramatically the standards of educations, and I mean the tech literacy of younger generations, it's going to be terrible because we will be only using tech but won't be able to produce any form of advanced tech. So I do believe education is the key. Learning how to code very early at school, learning what is exactly an algorithm, not just, you know, take a shalk and try to understand old school mathematics, but really how to apply mathematics to computer engineering as early as possible.
Yeah, I think I have a name for that, you know, this thing that you see. I have 3 kids. They're not so much kids anymore. They grew up a little bit older. And what I see is that they become, or we all become, slave of this technology, you know. And I think what you meant is that we need to incentivize more creativity.
Knowledge is power. So if we are just consuming American tech and Chinese tech, we don't have any power. And if I may, it took our continent 4 centuries between the actual invention of the printing press by Gutenberg and the invention of mass education, it took us 4 centuries. So it took 4 centuries between the time we were able to print a book and to massively read it. Are we going to take 4 centuries between the time we are able to produce an algorithm and the time we are collectively able to read it and understand it? Let's not wait 4 centuries.
Yes, we have no time for that because the Chinese and the Americans are already far away. How you're tackling the problem of education in your entity in Eura Technologies and in general in the startup network in Europe?
There are huge inequalities in terms of digital literacy and tech literacy. So clearly, you need to tackle inequalities first. I'm not very worried about the sons of Mark Zuckerberg actually learning how to code and learning how to become tech literate. I'm extremely worried about the kids of the income cities. I'm very worried about you know, the working class, the kids of the working class. They don't have much access to tech education because public schools actually don't provide much tech education across the continent. Most of the tech education is provided through private structures that are clearly not free, not here for free. So what we did at Eura Technologies, for instance, was just open up our labs, open up we created a learning district so that we could have all the poor kids from the neighborhood to actually come into our startup ecosystem and learn as early as 6 years old, even with no code and stuff like that. You can do pretty much great things in terms of tech education with very young kids.
Okay, so I think we fully agree on that. we have to start, in our own experience here in Luxembourg, we started at that range age, but we also see the need not only for younger ones, we need also to reskill the whole market, I will say, to be able to contribute to this transformation. So have you also thought about...
You're making a very relevant point. What is fascinating is that in the, I would say, the general public, people think of startups and tech industries like, hey, they must be recruiting only 12 years PhDs in physical engineering or whatever. No, actually, when you look at the jobs that are needed, and they are like greatly needed by startups and tech industries, you have salesmen, you have actually graphic designers. Basically, you have plenty of jobs that are lacking, that are not overly qualified. You don't need to have a PhD to actually apply to startups. And that's why I'm coming back to the question of inequalities, is that startups and the tech industries sometimes, and on our continent, they seem extremely disconnected. And so you have a lot of talents that actually don't project into the startup ecosystem. That's pretty much what we need to do. We need to reskill, but we need also to break barriers. We need to actually make people understand that the jobs that are here in the tech industry are open for everyone.
Then, switching back to startups per se, I want to ask you a more specific question about social startups and the challenge that these startups face, because their goal is not to become, billionaires, unicorns, per definition, but to solve the societal problem that might not necessarily there will be a lot of investment and future and sustainability, financially speaking. So how we can help those potential entrepreneurs that see the problem, see a social problem there, and how they can access the funding and the support to be able to start and then scale up their social responsibility startups.
I'm going to keep being very French and not answering your question. But basically, I do believe that the very first social entrepreneur is actually the state.
Okay.
And before actually thinking of what we can do for social entrepreneurs is, what can we do for the state to be its own social entrepreneur? I'm fascinated by the number of digital solutions, of startups that were created and that were just created because the state was failing in its own digital transformation. And we've seen that with the Corona crisis. It was fascinating to see that some people in the general public would just turn to startups instead of social services. In France, we have a very, very specific example. We have this unicorn called Doctolib. You can book a doctor appointment online. Why is the state, the social security, you know, it's almost a goddess in France. Why wasn't it created by the public servants? I think that tells a lot about the state lagging behind in terms of digital transformation. So we have here a gigantic recovery plans all across the globe. We should definitely put the priority on digital transformation of the public services, because otherwise we won't be able to actually help social entrepreneurs. Because I do believe that social entrepreneurs, obviously they need to address this very important social issues, but it's going to be extremely difficult for them if the state is not digitizing and if public services are not transforming.
So the challenge there is how to connect with the governments and the startup ecosystem. You know?
We've been talking a lot about the very painful relation between startup and large corporations. Let's discuss the even more painful relationship between startups and the government. Yeah, it's definitely the key.
I think it's a good idea, and myself, I have that experience from the social side here in Luxembourg. And although it was not painful to start, I mean, supported from the Prime Minister itself, it was difficult to scale up, okay? Because, you know, people is I mean, or the system, okay? Not to be wrong, the system is more looking into financial results immediately and not on the impact that you can create, wherever there will be a financial result or not afterwards. So I think there is an evolution needed there.
That's what I told Commissioner Breton last time we discussed this. I told him, hey, you are putting 750 billion euros on the table with the recovery plan. How many euros do you think are going to go into startups? And obviously he could not reply because they can calculate how many euros are going to get to SMEs, but startups today they're clearly not on the radar, and I think that's a shame because we won't be able to achieve the digital transition on our continent if startups are not considered a part of the solution.
So what should we do then? We just cry or try to change that?
Well, I think first we need to change the mindset. I mean, last time I was in Tel Aviv, I met a very prominent VC. He exited Mobileye for 1 billion euros, so he's doing quite well. And he told me this joke, and I think that's a very relevant joke, so I'm going to tell you. He told me, well, you know, European people are crazy. They believe startups are created by 3 people in a garage. I told him, not exactly. And he was like, we Israeli people, we are very, very clever people. We know that startups are created by 3 people in a garage at the Ministry of Defense. And I found that extremely interesting because it was making a clear connection between clearly public authorities, public spending, public money, and the innovation ecosystems. And we in Europe tend to think that innovation ecosystems and startup ecosystems have to be disconnected from public spending and public innovation. And we're actually the only ecosystem in the world that works like this. If you go to the US, if you go to South Korea, if you go to China, obviously, Clearly, the two are intertwined. So let's work on this interconnection. Last time I met the French Minister of Defense, I told her, I think I can quit my job at the European Startup Network once there will be a retired general creating his own defense startups. Because that's what they do in Israel. Retired generals, they don't go into very well-paid
to do networking.
large corporate. They actually create their own startups. That's what the former head of Mossad did. And I think that actually clearly creates a mindset of a very strong correlation between the public sector and startups. And that's clearly the key, and that's clearly what we are lacking here on the European continent.
Very interesting, and I agree. We need to push more for the synergies between all the actors. I think the world of startup is not an age thing. You know, it's not for young people. It's for whoever see a problem and want to commit to make a solution for the problem. And I believe that the opportunities are there. I mean, there are many opportunities in Europe. I see it here, for example, in Luxembourg. So opportunities are there. So what you will recommend to people to do? I mean, those ones sitting in let's say, in what I call in a box in their offices, feeling that they are in the wrong place. And then they see this problem happening every day and they want to do something, but they don't have the courage to make the first step. So what should they do?
Honestly, the first advice is do not listen to advice. I would be extremely presumptuous in actually telling startup founders what to do. But what I find fascinating is that we tend to actually think that entrepreneurship needs to relate to startups. I've seen many entrepreneurs doing entrepreneurial stuff outside of the startup world. And so if you are sitting in your office and you're feeling bored, actually you can be an entrepreneur in an association, in a community organization. You can be an entrepreneur inside a public public sector. You can be an intrapreneur inside your own corporate. The world is quite open.
Yes. So, thank you, Nicolas.
Thank you so much,
also
Doctor.
for coming to Luxembourg and visit us today. It was a real pleasure, and I appreciate the discussion. Took some notes for the future, and thank you again.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's move on to our last morning session of today morning. And we're going to have 5 tech experts joining the session here as a panel. And they're going to talk about our main subject on how to reconcile tech and education. So we're going to have today Sunain Aitan, Senior Cybersecurity Specialist and STEM Meets Ambassador, Mentor and Advocate for Inclusion and Diversity in Tech. So join here, please. Sunaima. Avanti Sharma, that we saw before this morning, tech specialist from workshops for me. Avanti. Please take a seat. Priscilla Chavez-Martinez, we also saw this morning, a tech specialist and impact entrepreneurship. Priscilla, please join the table. Shirley Miller, which will join us online. Can we have Shirley online, please? And last but not least, Aida Nazari Moran. Sorry, this is quite hard for me to pronounce. Aida, who's going to moderate the panel. Thank you, and all welcome.
Okay, Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for joining in this panel. And also, I would like to welcome all the panelists for joining us and contributing in the discussion. In the talks in the morning, there was a lot of emphasis on the future, on the impact of the digitization, how our lifestyle, how our work, and everything is going to change. And in the last years, we have seen that a lot of the adaptations during the pandemic has been happening in a speed that we could not imagine before, right? So if 1 year before the pandemic, somebody would tell us that the teachers would teach through a digital classroom, or we will just simply move to remote working or conducting our businesses virtually, it was really far from us. But we saw that we actually adapted relatively quite well and in a very agile manner. So I think one of the interesting things that in this panel we can discuss is about some kind of another long-term adaptation to the digitalization to make sure that our life and the way that we work and our skills are some kind of like sustainable and we can keep up and we are not left behind. But of course, in a way that this adaptation is not caused by any kind of like emergency situation such as the pandemic, but more on some kind of like awareness about what is happening, and the fact that we know that if we do not make an action and make some kind of like a conscious decisions, it's very probable that we would be left behind. So I think it would be great to start a discussion about the fact that if we are thinking about some kind of like a lifetime change and developing a mindset of lifelong learning and adaptation and improving ourselves, initially it comes from the awareness. How do you think the society has the awareness and what is the level of this awareness? And then based on this awareness, how much motivation we need to actually try to build, and what are the ways that we can actually motivate people to develop this mindset and skill sets that can help them to try to learn along the whole duration of their careers and also in their life. So Cheryl, maybe we can start with you.
Wow. Well, first, thank you once again for bringing us back for this really important discussion today, and for giving me the toughest question as the opener. Yes, how do we motivate? What is the, there's a lot of discussion about, different kinds of mindsets that affect children and learning and lifelong learning. And I think there's a lot of work on that being done, especially in the US, being pushed kind of around the world. What is that mindset? But I'm also thinking about lifelong learning and COVID and how, some of the things that you said to open the session. And I think I would make a small correction, to be honest. Again, looking at this from a gender perspective, the impact of COVID on women in particular has been incalculable. I think about what has happened in our education system, and I knew before we went into COVID that one of the challenges for getting girls, for example, into science and technology is that primary school teachers, largely women teachers, are already carrying these kind of negative stereotypes related to STEM, and they are projecting them onto girls and to boys at a young age. So we've known for a long time that this is an error in the system, that we need, not in the women themselves, but a kind of mindset shift that we need. But there's been no work done on that question, as far as I know, and I've been active on this topic in Europe for over a decade now. So there's no there's no initiatives addressing that challenge. And then when we look at this digitalization that has now been thrust upon all of us, I really wonder how smoothly it's gone. And I only have anecdotal evidence, but I know teachers. My twin sister is an assistant principal in the Atlanta school area. And they have really borne the brunt of this learning curve that was very, very steep, has changed the way of working. And many women selected out of the workforce, but also were forced out of the workforce disproportionately. And then I come back to my presentation earlier. Under economic duress, we are now scrambling to become starters because we need to have some kind of financial wherewithal, financial stability. So I actually don't think where women are concerned in particular, our growth path in careers is also not a straight line. I'm not sure it's as difficult to convince women about the value of lifelong learning, because I think out of economic necessity, we are kind of constantly being pushed back into that, I need to learn this, I need to learn that, I need to learn that mindset. And actually where startup is concerned, where digitalization is concerned, yes, there's a whole lot of digital skills that, again, where you talk about mindset, where women and girls in particular think, oh no, that's not for me. Or startup, right? Oh no, that's not for me. A lot of that is, it's more related to the images that are projected towards girls and women about what startup is, what digitalization is. And I applaud the organizers of this event for taking that into consideration in terms of who's speaking, who's talking about what, trying to change that image. So that shifting that mindset, that STEM is not for me, that's very important. And I think as far as that goes, there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done, but clearly showcasing different role models in the education environment, but also in society more broadly, that is a really key thing that we need to change.
Thank you very much for your insight. It's really true that basically we don't want to wait until the point that we have to rush into making a modification and quick adaptation. It's more about like how we are going to plan it. And then I think like building a lifestyle based on the fact that we want to adapt in a long term, in a less sharp, let's say, for example, like diagram, as you mentioned before. So basically, what are your opinions, Priscilla, about that? That if you want to really think about a long-term change and the fact that the lifelong learning is there to stay, and basically the shelf life of the skills that we have developed through our, for example, like formal education or the courses that we have taken, they're quite short now, right? So we need to consistently like update ourselves. So in this regard, how we can actually develop like a lifestyle based on this, which is helping us to basically upskill ourselves like gradually, rather than waiting on the point that this is some kind of like a action that you have to take in a matter of the weeks, or basically you are left behind and you cannot deal with it anymore.
Yeah, so lifelong learning is not a new concept. Socrates was speaking about that. I don't actually think it's the new generations, the ones that need motivation. They are clearly motivated. You did an amazing job, by the way. I think it's, and I also feel a lot of resistance of passing it over to the women or to the communities and populations that need to upgrade themselves on the responsibility of doing that. The first responsibility is on the leadership of communities, governments, and corporations that are not creating solutions, that are thinking about that lifelong learning need that the world has. So I honestly believe that the first step is back to the decision makers, who are the ones at the tables of corporations and governments that can redefine the way the future of work looks like. So when we think about lifelong learning and the back to work strategies that companies have now, they are not now talking about the synchronous and asynchronous type of jobs, right? So there's a specific job that I can do back in my place, in my house, when I have the time. I don't need to connect live to my work team. I don't need to do it simultaneously with other people. I can do it at my spare time. Maybe that's something that works for me because of because I have children, because I have a family, because I have another job, or simply because I don't like to work during the day, I only like to work during the night. So that type of asynchronous work is the responsibility of corporations and for decision makers to basically define and redesign, and then for workers to have access to that. And then the synchronous type of work, the one that I need to do with other people collectively, collaboratively, co-creating solutions, that's the type of work that actually speaks to the skills of the future, right? The skills around innovation, creativity, how is it that we can brainstorm and ideate things together. Those are the type of skills that will be needed. I'm in agreement with a lot of things that the previous conversation had, the fireside chat, but one thing that I feel strongly against is the fact that everyone needs to learn how to code. That is not true. It is not true that you need to learn and understand how your mobile phone works, because it's no longer required. It's already obsolete learning. So what I do need to know are the skills for societal and like person-to-person type of interaction. And those type of skills are the ones that I get when I can, in synchrony, connect to other people. And again, the motivation comes from creating the right ecosystem, the right spaces and forums for people to connect and collaborate. That's not for the women that are struggling to find means of living. That's not for the immigrant that has just landed to a new country to find. It's on the leaders to create and design those spaces.
So basically, from what I understood, the conclusion here is that you have, sorry, Cheryl, you want to continue the discussion?
No, I just was giving a thumbs up.
Oh, okay,
because
perfect.
I agree.
So from what I understood, you are insisting on a concept of co-investment, that basically learning and advancing is not just basically the job of the individuals and the people in the society, but is heavily impacted by the other stakeholders, such as the, let's say, for example, like industries, decision makings, and governments. And previously, we discussed a lot about like the inequalities in terms of like, for example, like how many women are involved in the technology, how many minorities, and how many race groups are involved in the technology. But then one of the questions that I always have is that basically the incentives are a little bit different across these different stakeholders, right? So if we are putting a lot of expectation on, for example, like industries, that they are, for example, like starting to lead basically the further education and lifelong learning, and they put their own proposals on the table for the employees, is there any kind of like a conflict of interest that you would see? And also, like, for example, like we have seen that for many, many years, the needs of the women and the future of the women and the minorities has been some kind of like, not neglected in a sense, but also some kind of, they have not been in the priority of the decision makings in a lot of different areas. So let's say, for example, like we as women, that we want to promote women participation and inclusion in the technology and the digitalization. How much we can actually identify like this kind of like conflicts of interest, and then in that kind of situation, what is our role to be able to create a balance so women can have like more opportunities and of course more awareness and motivation in these fields. So do you want to continue or?
Sure, I'll make a small comment because I really want to listen from the rest. Take a look at this room. It's roughly 50-50, right? So 50% female-identified individuals and 50% male-identified individuals. This panel is 100% women. Because naturally, you would think that education and community type of work is led by women. Women are not the ones leading this world. Women are not, and I feel very strongly about not turning this panel into a diversity talk. But certainly, women are not the ones that are holding the leadership positions. Why are we the ones that need to shift the world if we are not sitting in those leadership roles? So we need more men that are capable and have the tools and resources to change the course of the world, to understand that there's no future without inclusivity, diversity, and zero discrimination. So that's, my short answer is, women are not the ones that need to uplift women alone. We need everyone doing that.
Okay, Great. So Naina, what do you think about this topic?
With COVID, like we've spoken about COVID a lot during the morning sessions, but that was the initial shift to where we saw this increase of technology use. People were forced to use technology. People that didn't have a website were now selling their goods and services online because they couldn't open a market on a Saturday morning. But then we've seen the progression of women within those industries slightly fall back. We've touched on the fact that women were taking a step back from the workforce to look after the families. Women were forced back into those traditional homemaking roles. But one of the things that came out of COVID was flexible working. So flexible working is something that women have been asking for decades. We were forced in a situation, it took a pandemic for seniors, management, which is typically white males, to say, yeah, we don't have a choice now. We're going to have to allow people to work from home. It took CEOs who were also being forced to stay at home, that were also forced to share responsibilities within a household, that realized that this isn't easy, this is hard. So the conversations around flexible working are so interesting at the moment, because you have sort of the old school boys club, the big four, big investment banks that are saying, oh no, you know, the millennials need to go back to work, they're being lazy, flexible working isn't going to work. And then you have this new way of sort of working and this new way of learning where people are saying, taking a stand and taking this opportunity to say, we're going to work when we want, and we're going to put our mental health state first, and we're going to put our families first. So the conversations are super, super interesting, especially at the moment around flexible working, but this impacts women more because of the struggle and the balance of working life and home life and doing everything in between. So for me personally is when it comes to especially learning and, with COVID, we were at home, you saw things like banana bread breaking the internet, becoming the massive trend because people were doing things they wouldn't usually do. People were learning something they weren't supposed to do. Learning comes in all sorts of forms. That's one of them. So, one of the things with COVID was that people were trying to learn different things. People were running marathons and they didn't even know that they could. So again, when it comes to tech, people were going, building their businesses online, starting again, trying to figure out something else to do. A lot of women, so I'm in work with STEMETS, a non-profit organization that encourages young females into STEM-based roles. For us, the conversation was interesting because there's displacement. So when COVID happened, learning switched to online, but that learning switching to online was for the elite, for students that had access to the internet, that students that had access to laptops that went to potentially private schools. Students that were from public schools that were in remote areas across the UK didn't have access to that. So then we've seen tech as a privilege. It's for the elite. It's for a certain class of people. What we had to then do is push out laptops to these kids, get them online, get them access to the internet, get them involved in online events that were being run throughout the whole pandemic. So then, like how Priscilla was saying, this conversation needs to go to people in higher up in government roles, people in corporate places, that why has, in Europe, every single child should have access to the internet, every single child should have access to a form of a computer. But that wasn't the case when we probably needed it the most. So we've seen a fallback in who has exposure to these technologies, and how do we expect sort of these kids now to play, chase up to the rest of us or to the other kids, because they weren't born in a certain environment or a certain position. So geography goes a long, long way. I lived in London my whole life. I went to a school, it was a state school, public school, but we had access to laptops, we had access to MacBooks. So I never faced that issue, but I've seen kids that have faced that issue. And it's really hard to watch. And we're seeing youth centers that are having to pick up those parts when it's not really their core role. They're having to pick up those roles of providing a space where kids can learn and kids can play catch up when this should be really coming from higher up.
Okay, thank you very much for the explanation and also clearly telling us about your own experience in this one, which is really focusing on the fact that it is not possible to have one stakeholder working alone. So basically, without the support of the government, it's not possible that the individuals lead this, and also without the support of the industries to make the working situation flexible and open up opportunity that people can actually invest the time on learning, it would not be possible. And also without the willingness of the individuals, again, it's not, if you don't have enough motivation and enough awareness about that, why we need to invest and why we need to take a portion of our time and focus it on identifying what to learn and identify the ways that we can actually enhance our skills, it would not be possible to make a difference. So, Avanti, I really like to have your point of view about this one. So basically you have a very fresh eye on this one, and then it would be really nice to hear that what is your expectation on this side. I really want to see that what is your feeling about the women that are some years ahead of you, and how do you see that they have, for example, their roles played, and also how do you see the things that you want to happen in the society that is some kind of a top-down approach. So how the situation of the women are, the way that they are basically leading this and trying to motivate and support other women, some kind of satisfy you. How's your feeling about that one? And also, what is your direct expectation that if there is going to be a top-down change and top-down facilitation for lifelong learning, what that would be?
Okay, yeah, so I actually completely agree with, all of the panelists, what they've said before, as the questions you were asking them. And I think, for the women senior to me in senior positions, this pandemic is really, it's taken a hit, and you can see it with all the statistics and figures. And I think the Big Four and organizations, it's also the responsibility for me comes on them as well, that how can they help, how can they make it easier, because it had become a crisis situation when we started in March or May of 2020. So even though we all expect them to, do something, make working conditions easier, have more flexible timings, ultimately they aren't forced to, because there's no one in a senior position saying, okay, you have to do this, you have to make it so that these are the conditions, kind of make it more flexible. So they aren't held accountable in that field. Also, what I would like to say is just the way which we're preparing younger generations, younger women, and actually just children, in fact, I think that makes a huge impact in what's coming in the future and how the workforce is. So I think that we have to start early on from education and that phase. And I think to reconcile tech and education and make them both come together, we have to kind of shift our model for teaching a little bit. Right now we are teaching kind of knowledge which we learned so many years ago. We're also promoting kind of reading fiction books, and fiction books are great, but I think the problem right now is students are not finding the connect to the digital economy. Right now we're learning, so for example, I have 3 years until I graduate, and we're faced with one of the most important choices about how much math we want to do and what STEM subjects we want to take, and I see a huge portion of women and just other class students as well dropping out just because of the lack of information which we're given about this. And I think that really carries on into the future about how the workforce is, the gender inequality between men and women in the workforce, and then ultimately leading to this situation. So I think to change this, one thing which I'd like to say is when we ask our seniors for guidance about what we should do, we're just given with the answer with that do what you like, do whatever you like. And while this is a useful answer, and it's true, yes, we will do whatever we like, we want guidance on what we should take in the future, how the economy is changing, and what will be most convenient for us to take, what will make us prosper the most. It's kind of like saying to a child, okay, you know, how do I get to Paris? Oh, okay, just walk wherever you want. And, you know, maybe, yeah, in 100, 200 years, you'll find Paris eventually, right? Because the Earth is round. But it would be so much easier if you could say, okay, go to the car and take a train, you know, take a train and go to Paris. So that's what I kind of want to shed a bit of light on, that we need to start guiding the younger generations, because ultimately they are the ones who are going to take this world forward. They are the ones who are going to be the future. And without doing the correct guidance from their formative years, I would think from primary year 3 to 4 to secondary year 4 to 5, so that's 9th to 10th grade. I think within those formative years, that's the most important time which we have to make this change happen in.
So I just want to re-ask Sherry's question one more time, because like at the beginning of the discussion, we actually had a point that a lot of times we are really insisting on, for example, like changing the education system, bringing a lot of like, for example, STEM in the education, building up the skills that can contribute in further learning and being prepared to join a technology job. But as Shirley said, one of the challenges is that even if you have some kind of like a decision-making process from the top down that is trying to modify and change the way that the education system is built, a lot of times, at the end, we will deal with the, for example, like the teachers, that they have been stereotypic, they have been dealing with these stereotypes that maybe as a teacher, I don't have like any knowledge or competencies to start teaching STEM. Maybe as a teacher, I don't have the ability to use, for example, like advanced tools in the education system. And that's why we have seen that, for example, like a lot of this difficulty of these modifications, they are not necessary because like the top-down willingness is not there, but in the middle of the way, we have like a lot of people that they are supposed to some kind of like on board with this type of education. So how do you see that? So for example, like what is the role of like the teachers and how they can actually increase their motivation and also like self-esteem in terms of that I can adapt. As a teacher, every year I can adapt to teach new things, I can learn and then basically convey this learning to the students that I'm working with.
So I think that teachers definitely, all educators play a huge role in this, but yes, you can leave some portion to the teachers, but I also believe that it has to start from the top, you know, the management of the school, but more than that, you know, the education system as a whole, you know, making sure that teachers are on board, completely friendly with technology, and able to teach the new and upcoming rising things which we're discovering today. So I think that teachers definitely have, and educators have a huge role in playing and shaping kind of the formative years of the youth and of the younger generations. But more than that, I believe that the responsibility comes onto the higher-ups and what they can do to educate their teachers, educate their educators, and what they can do to help.
And well, all of you, do you think this is going to be enough? So basically, if we actually think that, okay, there would be changes, hopefully at one point, we would be able to convince like senior decision makers or policy makers that equality is important, women need some kind of support from like higher level, and the system of the education needs some kind of fundamental changes and new approaches. Do you think this is enough? So as the citizens, is there anything in your opinion that we can do differently or do better or have like a different type of expectation that can shorten this period of time? Because it is very probable that there would be a second round of similar, not necessarily maybe a pandemic, but another wave of disruption that over a night we have to change everything. What is your opinion about this?
Can I jump in here? Oh, sorry.
I'm personally sick of trying to convince people at the leadership table to be mindful and aware of the reality that it's outside of their board meetings. I'm pretty much fed up with trying to advocate for these causes. I think it is not enough. It is not going to take us anywhere else to the point that we're at right now. And it is bloody time by now to change the people that are sitting around that table. I would advocate for more women, more minority, more chairs around that table. To everyone's point, it starts there. It doesn't start grassroots. Like, it has always been grassroots movements, the ones that have pushed humanity forward. We don't have time anymore. It's no longer an educational and workforce crisis. It's that crisis along with climate change, along with everything else that it's adding up. So I think it is now time that people, and I'll just call it as it is, it's largely males, white males, the ones that are making these decisions. Now we need more diversity in those conversations.
Cheryl?
Hear, hear. I'm also fed up. And I think, again, I want to thank the organizers because, you know, it's the illustrious Ruth Bader Ginsburg who said she wouldn't be happy until all 9 of the chief justices of the US Supreme Court were women. So because we've tolerated it being all men for so long. So I don't want to apologize for this all-women panel. I think it's awesome. And we do need more of that. Why do we need more of that? Because, I mean, props to the first feminists of the 70s who actually did bring on the changes in the workforce that we see today that were the precursors to flexible working. You know, like a 40-hour work week. You know, there were so many other elements just that having, and childcare, and, you know, and a more robust education system. The involvement of women in the workforce has already started a lot of those seminal changes, the work of the former feminists, and that are still happening now because we are still here. And looking outside the work environment at education specifically, let's also remember the power of informal education, the work that we are all doing that is setting the bar higher for how our formal education system should work. And not to say that we should stop pressuring, you know, putting pressure on decision makers and changing the formal education system, but at least we are creating a measuring stick against which we can start to disrupt education. And because of that urgency of the change and the adaptability, we see so much content that's more available out there now that wasn't there before, that can respond to that, you know, that timely need for on-point skills, and where I think there should be a transformation of the vocational education system. If you really want to look at jobs or at training that is geared towards jobs, that's where it is. Look at your community colleges, look at your vocational education programs. And there needs to be much more of this, I would say, melding of these two environments so that kids are coming out of school with skills that are very much on point. And one other, I think, key education approach that we should be seeing more of is apprenticeship. You were saying, you asked about the conflict of interest with business. No, I don't see it that way at all. I see it as business being the storehouse of the need in the first place. Business needs educated workers. Business also has the expertise in-house to skill people in the way that they need workers to be skilled. So let's call the business community more to task in serving our education systems. I think that's, you know, we always see this, the 3 Ps in Europe. We talk about, you know, or anyhow, whatever it stands for, I don't remember, the private sector, the public sector, and the third party, like all of us present, who are the, you know, the nonprofits who are overseeing the mission to make sure that it's not education only for business's sake, right? But it's education for the students' sake. And indeed, where we call to task our public sector decision makers to be raising the bar to the level that we need to have for our own betterment as people, but also for our betterment as a society. And my last point, in the US here, I'm American and Belgium, we have something called Title IX. I want to go back to the Olympics analogy in the fireside chat. If, I don't know about the Tokyo Olympics, I only know from the Rio Olympics, that if the US women's team only competed as a country, they would have gotten third place in the medal rankings overall. And that's because we have an effective quota, meaning if any money is going to male athletics, the same amount must go to women's athletics in collegiate level sports in the US, bar none. Now I ask you, and I ask the public, what the effect of that has been. Quota is not a bad word. This is what we need to demand from our decision makers.
Thank you, sir, very much for the detailed explanation, and that's very important, that we should not be ashamed of like quotas as women. We should not feel bad about it, and we should try to benefit it for the benefit of our next generation. Use this opportunity to build a generation that can inspire the next one and also pave the way for them, so hopefully they would have less challenges in this area.
And by the way, it was your very own Viviane Reding who started the board directorate at the EU level that has now been taken up across Europe.
Okay,
your own
so,
member of European Parliament.
Yeah, thank you very much. To be honest, like the discussion when it arrives to the gender equality and the women's situation, like in the digital tech, is a discussion that you want to continue forever. And a lot of us start with the point of this frustration, and that's what's really difficult to wrap everything up like in a half-an-hour session. But thank you so much from all of you, and for sharing your insight and also raising the questions and helping us to continue this discussion. And I hope that very soon there would be more chances that we can actually have more discussions with you and also hear more perspectives from the women who are successful as you. Thank you very much.
So, yeah, you can go. Thank you. So thank you. So with this panel, we end this morning on the Digital Summit conference. So I want to thank you, all the speakers, for your effort to come here or online to share the insights and especially inspire us. Also to thank you for the ones that join here and stay here with us, and the ones that join online to follow this conference. The next part is this afternoon will be around digitalization of the supply chain, and this is supported by the Ministry of Economy here in Luxembourg. With this, I want to thank you again, and bon appétit.